Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers, and it is draft day. We finally reached it, Thursday, April 28, 2022, and it's in Las Vegas, going to dominate the headlines today. That's what the NFL does. They find a way to just get in and take everything over. So a lot of NFL draft talk today, and we're going to have on in just a moment Scott Smith from the Action Network, and he's got a great breakdown of what he thinks who's going to go number one. Past that, there's just so much uncertainty. We got to figure this whole thing out. So let's get right to it. Stephanie Otey is here as well. And there is Scott Smith. You can find him on Twitter at ScottSmithFF of the Action Network. And Scott, good to talk to you again. We had you on Monday. We taped the video looking forward to the draft. Now you had your final mock draft out on the Action Network. You got Trayvon Walker, number one. Oh, the odds moved on Monday. So now locked up. That's what you think he's going to Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the pick. You look at all the big media names, Daniel Jeremiah, Peter Schrager. There's not anybody else that's really looking at going at that pick. I think Trent Baalke and the Jacksonville Jaguars are absolutely locked in on this pick with Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, the defensive ends are kind of the name of the game this draft. And Thibodeau, his draft stock kind of lowered a bit over time because of the report about him not liking football or the character conflict that some teams are looking into. So how much do you think teams are actually weighing in on that?
Look, I think a lot of the Kayvon Thibodeau just character concerns is really just overhyped. I think when you started looking and listening to what the kid actually has to say in a lot of these interviews, I think he really started to win a lot of people over. I have contacts with some betting syndicates, and there's some information out there that Kayvon Thibodeau may be the number 2 overall pick to Detroit. So there's a lot of sharp money that's been coming here on Thibodeau late. Ultimately, in my mock draft, I decided to go with Aiden Hutchinson because I think he's a little bit safer player. But there's definitely a scenario that plays out that sees Kayvon Thibodeau going number 2.
Because on SI Sportsbook now, Scott, Aiden Hutchinson minus 150 or so to go number 2. Thibodeau's at plus 130. It just feels like over the last few days, we're hearing so many different opinions going every which way that I don't even know. I mean, past Walker at 1, that feels like it's a lock. But after number 1, everything seems up in the air.
Yeah, there's multiple scenarios that can play out. I think there's going to be 3 main scenarios that you can look at. I think Trayvon Walker goes number 1. In my mock draft, I have Aiden Hutchinson and Derek Stingley there. Up until yesterday, you could bet those numbers and get plus 600 to plus 550 on some networks and some sports books, but a lot of those numbers have actually been taken down as far as like trying to get an exact top 3. The other scenario that I could see playing out is Trayvon Walker with Kayvon Thibodeau going number 2, and you can still kind of bounce around and get some of those. Like you said, Kayvon Thibodeau is like a plus 135. And the third scenario I could see playing out would be Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and then actually Ikem Ekwonu, the big tackle from North Carolina State. That's the main 3 scenarios I see playing out. When you start looking at the guys that really dig into these mock drafts and have been accurate over the years, that's probably what you're going to see.
Yeah, this is an interesting draft. The top of it is mainly between those defensive ends and looking at how COVID impacted the college game so much. A lot of scouts, a lot of the talent searching in was pretty difficult because of that. So when you look at how guys were able to stay another year, would that like change the draft as much? Like, do you think that there's some people who can benefit from that, whether it's the team or the player themselves? Or I mean, just the way that this draft is stacked up with the talent, especially like at quarterback, you go from 5 in the first round last year to, will someone take 1 in the first round this year? A lot of the teams are wondering, should we go and try to make a trade or should we draft? That's kind of a big question. So how much do you think the impact of how the college game was played during COVID has impacted this draft?
Yeah, some of the negative connotations that have come for some of the players in this draft come from sitting out or come from being injured. You look at Kayvon Thibodeau and Derek Stingley as 2 of the top 2. Derek Stingley in 2019 was basically a lock to be a top 3 to 5 player here. And now there's some question marks, and some mock drafts even have him going all the way down to 12 to Minnesota. I think when you start looking at the tape and start looking at some of the things that have happened during the season with COVID and everything, I think that's absolutely potentially change some draft prospects. But you can also look at the decision to stay an extra year. I think Chris Olave is like another guy who easily could have came out last year. People questioned that last year with Devontae Smith as well. So a lot of these decisions do affect draft stock. And even at the quarterback position, Sam Howell was a player that was completely viewed differently going into this year versus what he was last year.
Yeah,
Scott, I want to go back.
Well, Chris Olave is a
Stephanie.
player that I covered a lot, and I know his choice to return had a lot to do with that Clemson game, the way they went out. He ran the wrong route, so he comes back, and then the COVID national championship. So that just made things so he wanted to return. But you look at their combine, and him and Garrett Wilson have been neck and neck a lot. They ran very, very slim in their 40. But a lot of agents that I talked to when players were deciding whether they should sit out during the COVID year or just move on to the draft or even go for the combine and run the routes and things like that. A lot of them decide if they've already proven their stuff on film, they'll omit that. But a lot of agents and scouts I talk to say that whatever you put on tape is far more significant than the combine. So playing through that season is far better than what you can do in the combine. So how much weight do you think the combine truly holds?
I think it holds weight with certain teams. I mean, there's the old Al Davis, you knew he was going to draft the fastest player. I think if Al Davis was in this draft, Jordan Davis would be a Raider. So I think it definitely does hold weight with some teams in particular. And with some teams, it's just trying to match up what you saw on film to see how fast a player plays. We take Kyle Hamilton, for example, and what you see on field, and even some of the analytics that actually measure his game speed, rate him in the top 80 percentile for defensive backs. But then he comes out, runs a slow 40. Some of these scouts start questioning what they see on tape versus what was measured. And that's how you can start to see players fall at times. So I definitely think there are some teams that weight the combine a little bit more heavily than others.
Mm-hmm. Scott, I want to go back to the Derek Stingley thing for a second. You push him up to 3, going to the Texans. What differentiates him from Ahmad Gardner, Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati? It seemed like he was maybe top 3, top 4. You have him going 5 to the Giants. What pushed Stingley past Gardner there?
I just think when you look at the SEC and you talked about game film, you can go look from his freshman year and see how good he was. Look, LSU had a down last 2 years. There was a lot of turmoil going on. A lot of talent left that team. But when you look at what he went up against there, even just in practices against Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and then how he played on the field as a freshman, I don't think he's a finished product by any stretch of imagination. And I just think the upside that he just has a higher ceiling than Ahmad Gardner. Look, there's no knock on Ahmad Gardner. I think he is a fantastic prospect. He also deserves to be up here in that top 5. I just think you're going to have a little bit of difference of opinion between some talent evaluators and some teams as far as what that ceiling is. And some of these talent evaluators, with the way the NFL has changed and how important it is to have somebody that can man up on a lot of these premier wide receivers in the league, I think some of those guys may just value Derek Stingley a little bit more than Gardner.
Scott, I was looking at your mock draft. Don't see a running back in the first round. That's kind of the trend now. Obviously, a lot of teams don't want to invest in a running back in that first round just because they tend to have shorter careers or they're big second contracts. But we did see Jonathan Taylor. He was a second round pick, lots of value there and what he could do. Najee Harris was a first rounder. So do you think that there's any benefit to drafting a running back in the first round like Breece Hall? Do you think he's good enough to overturn the stigma on running backs in the draft?
The only team that I had that really had a question about drafting a running back in round 1 was Buffalo. I think a lot of people look at their roster and think that might be the missing piece. He can take a little bit of pressure off of Josh Allen, and it was in consideration in my mock draft. Ultimately, I decided against it because I just think the way Buffalo drafts, I think they're a little bit more analytically based and value positioned a little bit differently. I do think that Breece Hall could be a huge difference maker if he were to go to Buffalo, but I just think the position is so devalued now, and you start to look at what it's going to take. Even with Jonathan Taylor and what he's done, you also have to look at what they built in front of him with that offensive line. So I tend to want to build in the trenches a little bit more than I would draft a running back, and I just think it's a devalued position here.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, what about the quarterback position? The over-under is 2.5 for the first round. Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett should go in the first round. You don't know if somebody else slips in. Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, Matt Corral from Ole Miss. I don't know if Sam Howell makes it from North Carolina. But where do you see Malik Willis going? Does Kenny Pickett get drafted in the first round? Where do you see those guys going?
I have Malik Willis firmly entrenched and have now for a while to Pittsburgh. A lot of information is saying that Pittsburgh's going to have their pick of the litter there at 20, that really no quarterback should go in the top half. I ended up settling with Kenny Pickett at Tennessee. We talked about Ryan Tannehill getting a little bit older. He kind of didn't have such a hot playoff and folded there in the playoffs. And next year, if they were to move on from Ryan Tannehill, they could save $18 million. So he's kind of a spot, and that's a number that you can still get at plus 500. So it's gone down from what it was earlier. You could get specifically Kenny Pickett to Tennessee at plus 50 to 1, and then plus 1,500 as well. But look, some of these teams that are talking about getting that third quarterback, you're talking about Seattle, you're talking about possibly Atlanta, and Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder are those guys. I just don't think that any of these guys have a good enough prospect profile to deserve to go in round one. Matt Friedman of Fantasy Pros has done a study, and when a quarterback hasn't been taken in the top 5, that usually tells you that the scouts in the NFL in general are really down on that quarterback class. And in those years where a quarterback hasn't taken until after pick 5, on average, only 2 quarterbacks have gone in the first round, and that's what my mock draft reflects.
Yeah, QBs, they've been selected in the first round and 6 of the last 7 drafts. Right now, though, there's 10 teams that are currently projected to start a quarterback they traded for after they were already established in the league. So teams are starting to trend towards just kind of slapping the Band-Aid on and getting an already established quarterback ready to plug and chug. Like we saw the Browns invested a lot into Deshaun Watson instead of maybe going for a pick here. But yeah, it is a bit of a weak quarterback class. Do you think that there's teams that might wait out for 2023 when you have Stroud, Bryce Young, DJ from Clemson? Do you think that people would wait out for that, or take a quarterback now just because they're there and you could maybe get him at a good round?
I absolutely think a lot of teams are looking towards next year. You talk about Philadelphia Eagles and specifically the trade that they had with the Saints. I think a lot of that is geared towards having a little bit of flexibility in next year's draft. If the quarterback situation they have now don't work out, I could definitely see a situation where, I have them mocked to Jameson Williams, and then who knows? They could go ahead and draft Alabama's quarterback and have 2 Alabama receivers and an Alabama quarterback next year. So I think there's a lot of things like that, especially when you look at next year's draft class and compared to what you have in this. There's no comparison. So I think the NFL talent evaluators are definitely looking towards next year for the ones that need quarterbacks.
Scott, I want to follow up on Malik Willis for a second. Now, guy that went to Liberty, formerly an FCS school, he moved to FBS in the last few years, independent, former SEC coach and Hugh Freeze there. Liberty played decent competition as an independent. I know a lot of people want to go back to Carson Wentz's FCS, Trey Lance FCS, small schools. How do you grade Malik Willis as far as not playing in the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC? How do you grade him, or do you say if you have the talent, doesn't matter who you play?
Look, I think at this point, Malik Willis is very much a projection. He's got the physical tools. He's got great arm talent. What they ran up there at Liberty is where you're really going to have some of the question. How can he make the reads? Look, it's great to have these running quarterbacks and all of that, but when you start looking at Malik Willis in particular, he's got the highest sack percentage of any quarterback in the last 15 years that's going to be drafted here in the first round. That's a concern. Can he make multiple reads, or does he just, kind of bail and start to roll out? I think he's in a good position if he gets taken by Pittsburgh with that coaching staff that's going to take the time to develop him, specifically with Mitch Trubisky being, a bridge quarterback. And I just think they look at some of that arm talent. They look at the quarterbacks that they have in that division, and I think you can definitely see a situation where he succeeds. I just think it's going to take a year or two to do that. You look at specifically Trey Lance last year with the 49ers and where he's at and where his development's at. And some people seem to think Malik Willis is behind even Trey Lance.
I'm looking at your wide receivers here. It's a stacked draft for wide receivers. I do have you fading my Buckeyes a little bit, taking Drake London as the first receiver over to the Falcons at pick 8. How do you even look at this wide receiver class and determine which teams would want to take it in the first round or get like a value pick in the second round, just because there's so much depth at this position?
Even with the depth that they have at this position, I think the wide receiver position is just getting more and more important. You look at the contracts that Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams just had, and from a monetary standpoint, having a wide receiver on a rookie quarterback is going to start to develop and be similar to having a quarterback on a rookie contract. So I think you're going to see teams start to move up into the first round to really take any of those wide receivers that have those first round type of values. Even some of the guys that are in the second round may get pushed up. George Pickens is a guy that I think from a lot of what you hear, you hear things about him being entitled. You hear some of the, off the field issues that he had there at Georgia, but his talent is going to dictate him, getting picked there late in the first round by a team like Green Bay or Kansas City. So I think some of those guys definitely get pushed up, but you also have teams that are looking, especially some of these teams that are making these decisions in the top 10. I think they're going to look at it in the talent gap between what you have at some of these edge rushing positions versus wide receiver isn't as big. So I think that's going to be a decision factor that comes in to some of these teams taking edge early and maybe waiting second round to take wide receiver.
Scott, how do you evaluate a guy like Jameson Williams, who you said probably a guy to go much higher if he didn't have that torn ACL late in the season or in the college football playoff, because it came so late that you say, forget it. If the guy's talented, we got to take a shot at him? Or are there teams a little afraid because maybe he's not where he should be, but the talent's obviously there with him? You have him going to the Eagles at 15, maybe paired up with Devontae Smith again.
Yeah. So I think specifically when it comes to Jameson Williams, he has an elite trait with the way that he runs and how explosive he is and able to just get behind and run by anybody. That's a trait that is different and unique in this draft in comparison to the rest of the wide receivers that are here. Because of that, I definitely think he would have been the top wide receiver taken had he been healthy. With the injury, he's projected to come back October, maybe November. I think it's going to take a team that's comfortable with their coach and their GM kind of not being on the hot seat to be comfortable to wait for that to come. As far as the talent, you're going to get a fifth year out of him. I just think that he offers too much from a traits base with that, just the way he's able to run by everybody. I actually compare him to a little bit bigger Deshaun Jackson. I mean, just the way Deshaun Jackson used to be able to just get deep on and run by anybody in the league is kind of how I see Jameson Williams. But the other real thing about him is he's just able to get off the line so quick and really not get jammed up. So I think some of those traits are elite, and I think teams aren't going to pass on them.
Yeah, we saw in the last year's draft, Jalen Waddle was hurt. He tried to go into the national championship. Then he had like a good run and then he easily went out. But he was drafted higher than Devontae Smith, who ended up to be the Heisman after Jalen Waddle was favored to be at the start. So, yeah, I think that some teams will overlook that and see the tape that they did put up when they were healthy. But I wanted to get back to the quarterbacks really fast, just because of the way that this draft is set up is that not many teams are motivated to make a trade up so that they know that the value they can get as to where they fall now. But Baker Mayfield is sitting out there right now, and he's played in the league. He did well with the Browns before this season was a bit of a hiccup. But do you think there's any teams that are looking to make trades maybe day one to get an experienced quarterback over drafting one and then trying to get them to build up and instead of just be ready to go right when on day one?
Look, Carolina was the big team that was really, rumored to be in contention for Baker. And it's been reported that trade isn't going to come on day one. I think you have to start looking at specifically Seattle and what Seattle's going to do. They've been linked to Desmond Ridder there in the second round and possibly even be willing to move into the back end of the first round to take Desmond Ridder. But specifically Carolina, I think when you talk about Matt Rule being on the hot seat and you look at the moves that Carolina has made, they're one of the teams that has the money available to go ahead and make a trade like that for Baker Mayfield. So to me, that's the team that's going to make the most sense. I think that's the team that gives Carolina the best chance to win. And I just think that whenever I'm kind of looking at the landscape of this first round, Carolina in particular, I think both for their GM and their team's long-term success, I think taking an offensive lineman there at that sixth position, or possibly moving back if they're able to do that, and going with a veteran quarterback like a Baker Mayfield, or maybe waiting for a Jimmy Garoppolo to come available, I think that's the play there for Carolina.
Garoppolo recently said that he would be happy to do a trade and do a combination package deal with Deebo Samuel. If that were the case, where do you think they could end up?
I just don't see that happening. That's a huge combo deal. That would be one of the biggest blockbuster trades for a package like that.
I
With a
thought Aaron
quarterback.
Rodgers and Devontae Adams were going to do it, but
Yeah,
hey.
and that'd be a rough one. I don't see that happening. That just seems like a pipe dream to me. And look, all the things that I'm hearing right now is that, the 49ers are very unwilling to give up Deebo Samuel. The other rumor out there was that the Jets were going to try to package a huge, like, can't turn down deal that would include pick 10. They have some links there with Deebo Samuel. I think it would make sense for the Jets in the way their roster is constructed. But how much is that going to cost? That's the real question. But as far as Garoppolo and Deebo going together, that's just not a deal I can see getting done.
Scott, before we let you go, give us one or two props you really like for the draft tonight.
Yeah, I think, look, the market has really shifted and really adjusted. I think a lot of it hinges on Kayvon Thibodeau. There's some numbers out there. If Kayvon Thibodeau does not go number 2, there's some good numbers that you can go ahead and get for, you look at like 8 to the Falcons at plus 1,000. If he slips all the way down to Seattle at 9, it's plus 750. So I think there's good to kind of sprinkle a little bit of money across the board there. And then look, there's a couple of other ones. I think if you go to DraftKings right now, you can get Malik Willis, the first quarterback, off the board, Ike Ekwonu to be the first tackle off the board, and Breece Hall to be the first running back off the board. And you can get that at plus 200. So that's kind of one I like to play a little bit with those 3 guys. And then another couple that I kind of like, I like Logan Hall to be a top 32 pick at plus 100. So, but look, the market has shifted. Quay Walker, if you're just talking about, like, yesterday was minus 170 to be a first round pick. Within an hour, he dropped down to minus 600. So the market's definitely been like tightening up and really changing the closer we get here to the draft. And the closer you get to the draft, you're going to see more and more sports books just taking down offers and taking down lines.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Smith, you can check him out on the Action Network at Scott Smith FF. Scott, thank you so much. We appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot. There is Scott Smith. And Stephanie disappeared for a second, but she's back now.
Sorry.
Stephanie didn't say goodbye, but that's okay.
The Irish goodbye. No, I was like clearing out my tab.
I almost thought I got rid of Scott before first. I was like, oh, my bad. But you dropped off. Now, okay, before we continue, you had you put out a 1-minute video for the draft, and you could check it out on social media. It was pretty funny, actually. You're going through the teams and what they're going to do tonight.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a play off of current trends. Like I said, the Packers, they got Aaron Rodgers back, but they traded Devontae Adams, so they're going to focus on defense because they typically don't give Aaron Rodgers the weapons he's asking for, and he just lost one of his guys. I had the war room, the leaked footage of the Cowboys draft board, and then they tried to make a play off of it. Oh yeah, that's a fake board, and I had the Patriots being the ones, the Spygate stealing it. So lots of fun stuff. And I ended with Baker Mayfield having an empty fall schedule and needing to book some more impressive commercials. So we'll see if any of it rings true. A lot of times we see mistakes by teams in the draft. So I was maybe foreshadowing.
Well, maybe the Packers just drafted the quarterback again. That'll really make Aaron Rodgers happy. We gave it $35 million. Who cares, But man, Green Bay, they just know how to just feel like screw it up somehow.
And there's receivers on receivers on receivers this year. So I would say get one in the first round. Give him someone that's reliable. I mean, take your pick. So I think the Packers need to just load up. Especially because Aaron Rodgers isn't happy. Do you think whether or not, however this season plays out for him, is he back in Green Bay, you think? Or is he done, or what?
No, I think he's going to stay. I think he'll write it out. He'll write out the new deal. Why not? I mean, he's still younger than, he's not Tom Brady.
He I don't know if he was teasing it or not, but I thought for sure he was not retiring, but he prolonged it a little too long, I think.
Well, the only good news with him is that he got his money. So just Look, he's got to win one home playoff game. He's had a lot of problems winning at home in the playoffs, so he's got to find a way to get that fixed up. And they're not in a great division, so I think he can. I think he'll ride it out. I think he will. I think he'll do that. Now, I want to ask you this: are you excited about the draft? I'm saying for this. This is why I ask you this. Because we don't have like quarterbacks at the top. It's just a bunch of like defensive linemen and offensive linemen. It's just hard to get excited about it. And this, we fall into this thing in this society, like we got to see quarterbacks, where they're going to go. But like offensive, defensive linemen, we don't really care about. It's like skill position players. In the top like 10, you could have maybe one skill position player go.
It's exciting day 1 and day 2, especially if you're a Buckeye like me, and we've had more first rounders than any other college. So it's exciting for Ohio Staters, but I like it because it marries my two, the college and NFL. It's like where the worlds collide. That's fun. I really like to see where guys I covered fall, because I had to explain on Great Day Nation. Tom really wanted to know where my NFL loyalty lies, and I grew up on Cowboys, but I prefer to root for guys I covered or certain storylines I like. And so the draft kind of lets all of that unfold. Like, I'd love to see Justin Fields get another Buckeye receiver like Burrow had Jamar Chase and their LSU connection. I like to see those pairings. Some teams I know love Ohio Staters, like the Saints take a lot of Buckeyes. Washington has too. So I like to see where they fall, because it does have a lot to do with how I watch the NFL.
Because right now it looks like maybe 2 Buckeyes in the first round, the 2 receivers, and where they'll go. And Scott Smith had Olave going to the Saints, but again, you have no Drew Brees. It's Jameis Winston there, and Garrett Wilson going to Houston, which isn't great because you don't have a great quarterback there in Davis Mills. So, and I always look at it that you still need to be put in the right situation. That as a wide receiver, you're actually going to change the quarterback. You need somebody good throwing you the ball too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what gets me upset about. Like, there's so much that has to do with your team, and especially with going back to Fields and even Dwayne Haskins going to Washington. I know that when he passed the reporting on him in Washington, it had a lot to do with the organization. The organization was a mess, and he just gets inserted in as a rookie quarterback and is expected to just vibe with an organization that's not doing so great. We saw like Trevor Lawrence, for example, in Jacksonville. That program is a mess too. So it has so much to do with where they fall. And that's why I saw there was a report where people were saying Justin Fields should try to make a case to be traded, because they're not doing a whole lot. They didn't make a lot of free agency moves to support him. I hope something happens in the draft. But and I asked Bobby this when we were on with him last week, is that should they have more of a say? And I mean, it's their future, Can they have any say as to where they go? And usually you have to earn that right when you become a Rogers or a Brady. But where you fall has so much to do with how well it goes. That's why first round quarterbacks aren't always the best, because the ones at the first overall usually goes to a bad program.
Yeah. And again, you see like with Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville, how much magic he can make. And again, Trevor Lawrence is not going to go to he's not going to go to Green Bay out of the gate, or someone like that, or Kansas City. He's going to have to go to a team, and that's just what makes the NFL, which just evens it out. You got to have these guys and hope that the old circle can turn around. That Kansas City at one time, they weren't great. They had Alex Smith, they got Mahomes, and then Mahomes turned. So, and there are other teams that are still kind of stuck. The Cowboys, their last 2. Think about this: the Cowboys' last 2 franchise quarterbacks are both mid-round quarterbacks. Yep. Romo and Dak. Like, if you really think about it, they didn't get first-round picks in early.
Dak got thrown in early too. I mean, I will give the Cowboys credit for finding Dak Prescott. I think he was a good find, and I mean, he was thrown in far earlier than anyone ever thought. But yeah, there's some teams that it has so much to do with where you go. I don't think just one guy can change a whole program. Although maybe Burrow he was a top pick that went to a struggling team, and they were in the Super Bowl. So like, how often do you really get to see that?
No, it worked out. And listen, he's excellent. And they got Jamar Chase, which obviously helped them. And, they went on that run last year, but it can be done. I mean, maybe not in 2 years, but it can be done. That's why the Bengals needed help to get them back to relevance, that they you can't just have the same 8 or 10 teams stink. We got to get them better and kind of even it out. And it worked for them. It hasn't really worked for the Bears yet, but also the Bears now have a new head coach, and they're stuck with the same, or they're stuck with the same, with Green Bay in the same division. So, like, that's the problem with the AFC East for years. We had Brady there. It was very hard to pass Brady because that team's always going to win the division. And that's what it feels like with Green Bay, that Chicago's not going to get there. They need a lot more help. So,
of the new head coaches, who do you think will be the most successful this coming year with their new draft prospects? Because I like Baker complained about having so many different coaches and so many changes with the organization. And yeah, like unless you get to have the same consistency, I think that has a lot to do with it too. Like if you're getting a new coach, a new coordinator, position coach, like if that changes all the time, I do think it'd be hard to find success.
I mean, this guy, Mike McDaniel, who went to the Dolphins from San Francisco, I think that's going to be a good pickup because he's an offensive-minded guy. They went from Brian Flores, who was a defensive guy, to now an offensive-minded guy. Yes, it helps. You got Tyreek Hill, Tua now another year. There's weapons offensively. They have a pretty good defense. I'd be interested to see what he could do. He brings a lot of energy. As far as the other coaches, I'm just going through. I mean, Denver, the guy Hackett. You have Russell Wilson now. You don't have Drew Lock. You don't have Teddy Bridgewater. Like now you have an improved quarterback position and you have an offensive coordinator as your head coach as opposed to a defensive guy. So be interested to see what he does. Also, I'd be interested to see what Josh McDaniels does with the Raiders because he's been a head coach before. It didn't work out in Denver. He went to the Patriots again. Raiders have talent. They now have Devontae Adams. Look, it's a tough division. He's got a lot to deal with there in that AFC West. But those are the few that kind of stick out.
Brian Dable stands out to me, especially in their division. I'm looking forward to see how they do, but I want them to buff out that team a little bit more too.
But also, he doesn't have Josh Allen. Let's see if he can make that magic with Daniel Jones. And look, they had 2 top 10 picks in Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, but Saquon's had injury problems, and Daniel Jones. Maybe he wasn't the goods. I mean, Daniel Jones and Mitchell Trubisky were 2 guys out of the ACC that were not at great programs, middle tier programs. And now you're asking them to be franchise quarterbacks. And we see how Trubisky's bounced around and Daniel Jones. Again, the spotlight is on Daniel Jones because he's in New York. If Daniel Jones was somewhere else, you wouldn't have that same thing. But because he's with the Giants, that's why he's more scrutinized.
Yeah, I think your market matters too. So many people are saying just wait for Mitch Trubisky to go off, and I don't want him to do too well just because then it's like it's gonna prove like maybe Justin Fields has to do better, because if he can thrive elsewhere type thing. But I don't know. I think I'm most curious to see where Baker Mayfield falls this draft.
Baker, what's so interesting about him is you think there's potential with him, and obviously he's going to get moved somehow because Deshaun Watson's the quarterback in Cleveland. And Baker, I wonder if he needs to change his scenery. That it's a hard one. He's a really hard case, I think, because there is the talent there. Maybe people thought he's doing too many of the commercials and he's not focused on football, but he can't be the only reason why the Browns failed, why the Browns had 3 years ago, they were supposed to go to the Super Bowl, failed. 2 years ago, went to the playoffs, got to the second round, lost to the Chiefs. And then last year, he was hurt. He had the labrum issue, and the Browns fell short of the postseason. We're just going to blame it on him, and that's it, and no one else because they brought in all those other weapons. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands.
Yeah, that one's the most intriguing, I think, because what we've been seeing a trend in the NFL is teams are more inclined to just spend a lot, like what the Browns did with Deshaun Watson. It's kind of like putting a Band-Aid, just slapping a Band-Aid on it and trying to make it work. But you really got to groom a quarterback into your system or shape around your quarterback. And so I would prefer to take a more experienced quarterback if you have the dire need for it, unless you have like a Green Bay situation where you can groom him under Aaron Rodgers, but you wouldn't trade up for that pick. I would want to wait for next year's draft to take a quarterback, and I would probably prefer to take Baker Mayfield and then wait out for 2023 when you have more options.
Well, look, the Malik Willis thing is interesting, like what Scott Smith said about, he got sacked a lot at Liberty, and again, Liberty's not a name program. Like I say, it's not a good program. It's not a name program that they've been moving up from FCS to now FBS, and they're an independent and they're playing better competition, which is good for him. And also with Kenny Pickett, the ACC was a bit down. No disrespect, Pittsburgh, but if Pittsburgh's in the ACC championship, the conference is a bit down because Clemson wasn't there, and the Steelers looks like they'll get a quarterback that I don't think they're going to ride it out with Trubisky. I don't think he's the franchise quarterback, that it's going to be one of these two guys. But Carolina's so interesting because Sam Darnold's still the guy. Like, that's who you're going to go with, that Carolina's not going to take a shot at a rookie quarterback. That one kind of is a little baffling to me.
Yeah. I think if anyone takes him, it should be Carolina to take Baker. I think that would make the most sense, but they have a 6th overall pick. And that's why, like, do you just take a quarterback because you have that pick? Because not many people want to be making trades at that. No one's really invested on trading up right in this draft to take one of those top overall picks, just because of the way the talent stacked up. So I like, what do you do? What do you do with that pick? Like, do you take a quarterback because, hey, there's one right there? What move do you make?
It's tough because number one, is Matt Rule sold on Sam Darnold? Like, is that the guy? Is he totally sold on him to say, all right, we're going to ride it out with him. We need some offensive line help. And if that's the case, then we do it. But Baker Mayfield is worth a 4th round pick? I mean, he's obviously not going to go for a 1st round pick. He's not going to go for a 2nd round. 4th or 5th round pick? Is that what he's going for? I mean, I don't know exactly what it is, but you're going to get him for like nothing if
but you could take him at 6, and he could, I mean, he's probably going to be available at 20 then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because a lot of these teams, again, the trade thing is weird because you know who's going to trade up. But when you look at these teams, Jacksonville 1, they have Lawrence. Detroit at 2's got Goff. 3, looks like the Texans are going to keep Davis Mills. 4, the Jets just got Zach Wilson. 5, the Giants have Daniel Jones. 6, the Panthers. 7, Giants again. 8, Falcons got Marcus Mariota. He's still young. They may ride it out with him. Thibodeau to Seattle. That's what Scott Smith has.
All of these teams you're mentioning, I would say you have a guy to buff you out for this year, and then get a guy from next year's draft for a quarterback to develop. You know, they're in a spot where they could take a young guy, groom him up a bit, but wait a year for better prospects, I'd say.
I mean, like, even Seattle, Drew Lock is your guy right now. Washington's got Carson Wentz. There's not a lot of teams that need there's 2 teams that need quarterbacks in the top 19 before you get to Pittsburgh at 20. Like, so if there's not a lot of teams with quarterback needs, that's the biggest issue.
Well, Carolina at 6, I mean, they're in a good spot to get one because the teams above them, because
nobody needs them.
Yeah, so the issue just lies in this quarterback class. Do you think
it's not great, and it's not Malik Willis's fault, and it's not Kenny Pickett's fault. It's just you don't have a star quarterback. That you had other guys go last year, and we get these every few years where you have like 2 guys, and then next year you're gonna have a lot more guys. It's just the timing of it.
Yeah, and when I'm talking to scouts or agents, I always ask, when you are in a position you're in your 1st round, maybe a top 15, do you just go for the position you need, or do you just go for the best available player? You know what I mean? It's different team to team, but most of the time, they're just going to take the best guy on the board.
They should.
Yeah.
Take the best guy and see what happens, and then worry about it later.
Like Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love.
But what was that, though?
In that situation, I wouldn't say to that.
But they were probably thinking to themselves, all right, we need to have a plan in case Aaron just drifts off and retires, that we have nothing. But at the same time,
if you got him a receiver or something, then he's like, that's your insurance policy right there. Like, I'm assuming they were doing that because he wasn't as happy. That kind of spiced things up even more. But I feel like if you got him exactly what he's been asking for, I'm pretty sure he's more inclined to stay because he has had MVP caliber seasons and he hasn't had as much as what he's been wanting. So give him what he wants, and I'm pretty sure he'll stick around.
But the other thing too is you can't find a free agent quarterback that's better suited than a rookie in the 20s when that's not the top guy. It's not like saying Green Bay, just throwing someone out. If Green Bay had the 4th pick of the draft, which really they wouldn't, but let's just say if they did with trades or whatever, and they got somebody really quality, say, okay, you're going to sit behind. They probably thought Jordan Love would be the Aaron Rodgers to Brett Favre. That we're going to draft this guy, sit him here. This is the best guy. But Jordan Love wasn't that guy. That was the problem. They got a quarterback who could be okay. Granted, he played in one game last year. But doesn't have the potential of Aaron Rodgers did when he was drafted behind Brett Favre. But look what happened to Brett Favre. He's like, forget it. You guys drafted a quarterback. I'm leaving in a few years.
Yeah, the other one I think is interesting. Like, I think Debo is in a tough spot because there's so many receivers and get him on a rookie contract rather than go and pay Debo. You know, he's saying he wants out of San Francisco. So I think he's not like Baker's actually in a good spot considering if he wants out of Cleveland and like he's lucky that this isn't a solid quarterback class like last year. I think Debo is he's on the flip side of that. Great receiver class, and you're wanting to switch teams.
But also, I don't think that Debo wants out. I think Debo wants his money, and then he'll be fine. If San Francisco said, "Here's your money," be like, "Okay, great. I'll be at training camp I'll be at camp the next day. It's fine." I think that's just all it's about. When all these guys say they want out because they're not getting paid. Once they get paid, they'll be like, "Okay, I'm good." Alvin Kamara was a big example last year at New Orleans. I'm done. Here's your money. Okay, thanks. Bye. Okay, I'll come back to practice.
What if he has an option to go to a team with like an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady? You know what I mean?
San Francisco was the NFC Championship last year.
But I'm saying, like,
think about that.
I don't know how
the NFC Championship. They had the lead in the second half.
I got nothing to say because I had Green Bay winning the Super Bowl. I don't know how they lost that game.
But I mean, how close were they? It's not like saying Deebo Samuel's on a crap team and I want to go play and win. Like he's on a team that's on the doorstep of the Super Bowl.
But if you could go to Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, I mean, I would do it.
For how long though? I mean, Tom Brady can play one more year and be like, I'm done.
I'd go for one more year. I want to go
for to mess it for 1 year. Like Antonio Brown is one thing where you're like at the end of the line, but Deebo Samuel's still so young. Yeah. He wants his money.
But then if you go to Brady and like you can put up big numbers and then you become more valuable after 1 year.
Deebo Samuel's very valuable. He's valuable enough without needing Tom Brady.
But it's just like the way the deck is stacked this year. You know what I mean? It could be opened up more next year with moves that are made. Maybe there's a clear-cut spot for him to go that fits the need both ways. You know, I think it's a weird spot this year with this draft.
I just think he wants his money, which is fine because he sees Tyreek Hill, he sees the other guys getting money. It's like, I want my money and I'll stay. That's all it is when these guys force trades. They're not doing it because they hate where they're at. They're doing it because they want these teams to be like, pony up, pay me, and then I'll be back. And it's fine. And he's going to do what he's got to do. So,
yeah.
Let's shift over to NBA. Shall we? Let's do a few games for tonight. All right. So Philadelphia, they've had 2 shots to close out Toronto. Now they got the 3rd shot to close out Toronto.
In Toronto,
yes. And they I think Philly wins tonight.
Okay, me too. I've been saying that. But like to your point, why haven't they closed it out yet?
They're just waiting. They're stretching it out. Nothing wrong with that.
Making us sweat.
Look, we need to get more games on TV. That's why.
Yeah.
Look, Joel Embiid.
Well, then why were the Nets a sweep? I did not see that coming. I kept thinking Kyrie's not going to let them lose to Boston. Wrong.
Wrong because Kyrie was not. Look, the Nets were a mess, and everyone that said that Steve Nash is at fault, he's not at fault because he had all these problems that no one can fix.
Yeah.
No one's going to fix Kyrie and his issues. Kevin Durant got hurt. Harden didn't want to play there anymore. And Ben Simmons doesn't want to play. So how is that the head coach's fault?
The Ben Simmons situation, what?
What do you think about that?
I think he's got something personal going on.
I do too. So quit. So retire and say, I can't play basketball.
He's getting money. He's getting paid.
He wants. I mean, this is the thing I don't like. I don't like that the guy wants to get his money and just be like, "Oh, my back hurts. I'm not mentally ready to play." You're not mentally. Then don't play. Then just retire and say, "This is not for me. I have money in the bank. I'll do something else. Go away. That's fine. Take care of yourself. But don't hold these teams hostage because you're just not ready yet. Like, go play."
Also, like, how do you think his teammates are towards him? Like, they gotta resent him. You know what I mean? Whatever Kyrie does, at least you're showing up.
I don't know yet because he still hasn't played a game. We don't know. Here's the issue. James Harden was there for so short a time, for less than a year. I don't know what they thought of him. Now Ben is there.
Harden's a hard. Teammates like him. Teammates really like Harden.
I think they give Ben the benefit of the doubt. I think right now the teammates do because they don't know what's happening.
You think they did in Philly?
No, not in Philly, but in Brooklyn, I think they're giving the benefit of the doubt now.
Then they must know more than we know because
I definitely do.
Do you think it's like a physical thing or a mental thing? I think it's
more mental.
Me too. I mean, we saw him. He was afraid to shoot last year, and then like all of this. Oh, my back's hurting. I don't know. I think it's something deeper.
You went to game 3. They said, or after game 2, and they were down 2-0 when Brooklyn blew both those 2 games in Boston. And they said, all right, Ben Simmons can be clear to play in game 4, which was
like a week ago.
Monday. Monday was game 4. Saturday was game 3. He couldn't play Saturday, but he could play Sunday. When they lost Saturday, he's like, no, we're not going to play now. So now you're down 3-0. You're not going to play the guy?
Like that's when you were needed the most. That's what I'm saying. Like if I were his teammates and I thoroughly believed he could come in and help us out, I would be like, come on. Like KD and Kyrie are like, it's all us. It's all on us. Like, come on, come and join us anytime now. Like that would frustrate me, especially when KD was battling through injuries. And then Kyrie with like, he couldn't even play in Brooklyn for the season. So come on, jump in here, buddy. Come on.
I know, and I just can't believe you haven't played for a year and like you still got back prop. Like, what have you been doing for the year? Even if you're not going to play, at least still be working out and be in basketball shape.
Yes.
And it's like you're just standing there trying to look cute on the sidelines. That's all you're doing.
Yeah. Like the getup he had on.
Like what? Do you own that jacket?
Oh my gosh.
That's Prada. The devil wears Prada. You see that? That green jacket?
If I were in his shoes, so I don't want to fault him because I genuinely don't know why he's not playing. If it is something worse, but what face value with the information that we have, that's what's bringing me to this conclusion. And with the information that we have, why would you try to like make it like a fashion show out of like your team losing? That's like LeBron sitting out when they're not even going to the play-ins. It's the same exact thing. Actually, it's worse because he got dressed up for it. Actually, I don't even know. Which one do you think is worse? Who do you think earns the worser teammate in that? LeBron sitting out?
No, I think LeBron's fine because LeBron carried the team the whole year. You know, I think LeBron is fine.
They were like he was like laughing and stuff.
I don't have a problem with that because he did. This is the issue too. This is what's funny about that. Just changing topics for a second with LeBron. That I always say it's a tough spot. So they're out of the playoffs, and LeBron's done a lot. Like he had a great season, and granted, his teammate Anthony Davis was hurt, and Westbrook had his issues. But should LeBron be sitting there like that, or like still like enjoying life? Like that's the hard part about it.
It's a pro and a con because you want to be around like happy people, but like if you're not upset, like after you gave your all. I want to see you care. I want to see you care because I give my all.
Just like sit there when they're eliminated, just be like this. Like he can't do that. It's a hard one because the guy's got so much money. He's set for 5 lifetimes, and he almost won the scoring title this year. And then that's one thing I'll give him is that he didn't try to win the scoring title because he had the minimum games. That he didn't play the final 2 on that bum ankle just to win the scoring title. At least he sat out. Was like, okay, I can't do this. That I liked, is that he didn't like say, I'm just going to be selfish and win the scoring title. At least he said, forget it. I'm done. Move on.
Yeah.
That I'm fine with.
Yeah. I see that one. I don't, because he's got plenty of records, but I see that one. It would be more about longevity for me. Like why go through a re-injury potential to we're not going in playoffs, you know? Why do it?
I don't know. I just
All right, but do you think Mavs can lock up the series tonight?
I've been so off on this series. You
I've
know
been
that?
so high on the Mavs. I actually took them when Luka didn't play and they won. Now they're up 3. They can close it out, and they lost by 1 point in their last game. That's the one that got that's the one that really bothered
Yeah, the
me.
game 4 they blew
That
at
one
the
really
end.
bothered me.
But also on the flip side,
Ugh.
Utah was up 12 at the half in that game 4 at home. And then look, Luka's obviously a superstar, and
But the way they won without Luka was the way he got amped up. Like everyone I know with the Mavs, they were saying he's the healthiest they've seen on that sideline, cheering on his team. He was so amped up when they were winning without him playing. And so when he was going crazy on the sideline, they knew that he was probably going to get back in. But it was very clear that no matter how the team performed, it would not play into when he would get back in, which I think it benefited them.
I mean, I've
The
been
fact
so
that they
off
could
on
win
Utah in
without
the
him was
series.
huge.
I liked Utah. The Mavs were laying 2.5 yesterday, and that line's flipped now. Dallas laying 2.5, and Dallas has covered the last 4 games in the series. So, yeah, you always have one of those series you're just wrong on, and this is the one I'm just wrong on. I feel like every
I was
game.
so wrong on Nets and Celtics. I definitely thought Brooklyn could win at least one game. Jeez, I don't know.
That Boston team is good, though. It's going to be a great series,
They
Boston,
are.
Milwaukee, in the next round. It's going to be a great series.
How are you going to bet that series? That's a tough one.
Well, Chris Middleton is out, so that hurts the Bucks, obviously. And, yeah, Boston.
I think that goes 7 games. It's got to.
Look, Boston's already a 4.5-point favorite in game 1. And they play in the playoffs a lot the last few years, Boston, Milwaukee. But one of those years was when Kyrie was there. They won that game 1, and then Milwaukee rolled them the Final Four. So, yeah, Celtics got a lot to play for here to try to knock out the champs.
Yeah, this is a legit Celtics team.
It's a really good Celtics team.
Oh man, I wanted to fade him so much this year, but I got schooled. I got schooled when it came to this past series. I thought I believed in Kyrie and KD too much.
The only time I took them was game 2 when they were down that whole game and then came back and won the 4th. So that was a little bit of a miracle. But I didn't take the game. You know what they ended up doing this year against Brooklyn? They went, I think they won the final 7 meetings. 2 of them, though, in the regular season, Kyrie and KD didn't play. So
right,
a little skewed there. But then the final meeting, they both were there. And that was the game Jason Tatum had like 51 points at the Garden. So they ended up winning 7 straight against Brooklyn, which is very impressive. But Boston, look, they were a team that went through some growing pains a little bit with their new coach. And then they ended up picking it up around like the All-Star break. So
after the game 3, when they went back to Brooklyn, after they lost game 3, I was like, they're not going to win a single game. But it took me 3 games because after the first, I'm like, nope, Kyrie's not going to let him lose in Boston. Wrong. So I'm like, all right, they're back in Brooklyn. All right, they're home court. Nope. Man, that one proved me wrong. But also before the playoffs, everyone was trying to avoid the Nets to be seated against the Nets.
Yeah.
How ironic is that?
Look, it's
there's
this fear of
sweep.
them.
It was the only sweep. And that was the one team that everyone said, oh, like, because they had to play in the play-in, oh, you don't want to be seated against the Nets. So, whoa.
Yeah. Look,
You're in the play-in for a reason, though. Look,
But I thought that the Heat should avoid Brooklyn in the first round. Or, I mean, they didn't really have a choice because Brooklyn won that game, so the Heat avoided them by that. But I thought if Brooklyn would have been the 8, it would have probably been an issue. They drew Atlanta instead, and they won in 5. And it just you wouldn't want to have to play those teams if you didn't have to. And Boston took care of business because there's Durant and Kyrie. They should have a lot around them.
All that extra rest.
Look, the Nets, though, they were an awful team to cover covering at home. Probably just doesn't fit. KD and Durant just don't fit together, or KD and Kyrie just don't fit together. They thought they
But
had
how-
the three superstars with Harden, and it didn't work out.
Do you think that after looking at this series in the East, I mean, it was loaded. So do you think that you've narrowed down your Eastern picks? Why the West has opened up more? The Minnesota Memphis series, I think, is the toughest one.
In the East, I mean, now you're getting down to like the good teams. I got to believe the Heat eliminate whoever they play in the second round. The Heat don't want to play the Bucks. I think they don't want to play the Bucks. I think they can beat the Celtics in a 7-game series, but I don't think the Heat want to play even without Middleton. The Hawks are a bad barometer for the Heat because they shut down Trae Young, but I mean the Hawks that we saw last year really overachieved, and they drew a Philadelphia team who melted down, and then they got Milwaukee, and Giannis still missed a little bit of time in that series, but. Now let's see the Heat play somebody a little better with Philadelphia.
A little bit better.
A little better. I mean, that's assuming Philadelphia gets better. It could be Toronto.
I will say I was really high on Sixers ever since All-Star break, and I want to stay true, but I'm starting to have a little flicker of like, I don't want to choose Celtics. I don't. So I want Bucks in the series, but that's going to be a tough one to bet. That one really is.
I mean, even in the West, Golden State eliminated Denver, and now Golden State will play Minnesota or Memphis.
You were with me on that, right? Like you and I, because with Tom and Devin, they said no, Nuggets will upset Warriors. I didn't
think that was going to happen. I don't think I called for any upsets in the first round necessarily.
I had some faith in my Mavs. I really did. I'm so high on this series. I want them to close it out tonight. I really do.
Hey, you know what? If Dallas
about that last the 1 freaking point.
If they can beat Phoenix, or I mean, if they could beat Utah and then face Phoenix in the next round, assuming the Suns eliminate the Pelicans. Mm-hmm. Look, with Devin Booker sidelined, they got a shot, Dallas. They got a really
They were up like
shot.
17 points though, in their last game. Like it was a wide margin for the majority of that game.
Yeah, I mean,
even without Booker.
Look, Phoenix is still an excellent team even without their best player, and New Orleans was a 34-35 win team this year. And yeah, they started slowly. They played better. They're still missing. I'm not going to say Zion Williamson is their best player because he's not. You have Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. Zion's still a very good player, but that's a key loss. I mean, if Zion's playing in this series, a healthy Zion, New Orleans maybe has a shot, but they're a 34-win team, and Phoenix won like 60 games. So I'm still going to give it to the Suns, but if Phoenix can play Dallas, like you get Phoenix, Dallas, Golden State, Memphis, and those two in the West, it's a really good series. Those are excellent series.
Who do you have, Grizzlies or Timberwolves?
I was
on Grizzlies, but Timberwolves.
I gotta think Memphis finishes it off somehow, even if it goes. I do too.
Games. I think so too, but that one I question. Not like I do for Boston and Milwaukee, but those two are that's the matchup in the West that I get a little like, do I want to bet it? Do I want to bet it or not?
The problem with Minnesota is you've blown 2 games already. I don't know how they recover from that. I just don't know how. You had the opportunities. You blew 2 of the games. And Memphis, I think Memphis puts it together in one of these next. I cannot see Minnesota winning this series. I really can't.
All right, because I feel like everyone I've been talking to is on Minnesota. But I've liked the Grizzlies. I have.
No, I think you get 2 shots, including one back at home. Minnesota's a good young team. They made a lot of strides this year. They've made a lot of.
I just think they're so well rounded. Like I feel like they're a full team. A lot of the teams that we're looking at are like 1-2 punch, or there's the one guy like with the Nuggets. I like they have Ja Morant, but I feel like they're complete. That's what I like about Memphis.
Well, they have a lot of guys that step up that are, I hate to use the term role players.
They got a good bench too.
They have guys that Karl Anthony Towns. The problem with him is he disappears at times. He's so talented, but whichever game it was, the one that they blew the big lead, he had 4 field goal attempts. He had 4 field goal attempts. Like you should be shooting the ball. But he could score 30 in a game, but there are times you just don't know what you're going to get from him. Mm-hmm. Anthony Edwards turned into a really good player, obviously. I mean, those are both number 1 picks. Like you should be good when you get number 1 picks continuously. It's got to work out sooner or later.
Different
That's
than
why at least
NFL as we
Minnesota's more
talk draft.
competitive.
Different than we talk with NFL draft.
Right, exactly. But NBA, you better work out. So look, it's going to be a good second round. The first round in the NBA is never great. You know, when you get to the second round, it's going to be really good because now you're going to get monster matchups and you have really good teams the rest of the way. That you win 4 games in the first round, you're a pretty good team. Even if you were a 7th or an 8th seed, like Minnesota, if they could find a way to beat Memphis, you're a pretty good team if you could beat the number 2 seed 4 times. That's a good job by them.
So wait, who are your picks tonight? I got Mavs, Suns, and Sixers.
I like Philly tonight. I think Philly closes them out. If I give New Orleans a shot, I've been staying away from that series without Booker.
I mean, I wasn't fully invested in their last game, but it was a blowout.
Yeah, Phoenix jumped on them.
They didn't really close it out. Were they within a single digit margin?
For the most part, Phoenix was up.
I think they got up to like 10 or down 8, but it was like I saw a 17-point margin for a good amount of that game.
This is what I'm going to go with tonight. I'm going to go with the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans got a shot here. They're going to lose game 7 in Phoenix, but they'll win game 6, go back to Phoenix and lose game 7.
That's the thing that's so hard about series is like you have to decide when they're going to lose or when they're going to win. That last game convinced me, nope, Suns will, close it up. I thought when Booker went out, it'd be maybe the Suns would still win, but it would be closer. No,
I think the Pelicans win tonight. I think they have one last stand. They lose game 7. I'm still going to ride out with Utah one more time. I think Utah gets this one, and they go to game 7 in Dallas.
I do not want a game 7 because game 7, I don't know if Mavs will win.
Yeah.
I'm more confident in the Mavs winning tonight than I am game 7.
Yeah. Now you got to go home, and you got game 7. I think Philly ends it tonight. I really do. Because Philly does not want to, and it sounds weird, they do not want to go back home with all that pressure. Phoenix can do it. Phoenix will be
Philly
fine.
Fans are brutal too.
Philly's got to finish it off. Doc will never hear the end of it if Philly blows this lead. Well, obviously they blow a 3-0 lead for the first time ever. If Philly blows this 3-0 lead and they lose in 7 games, I got to think he's fired. I got to think he's done. Because you can't be up 3-0, dominate the first 2 games. Fred VanVleet's not even playing, their best scorer on Toronto. I mean, him and Siakam, you one of the 2 top scorers. You cannot lose this series if you're Philadelphia. You cannot. So I think they close it out tonight.
Yeah. I have them covering too.
So I just can't.
Do you think Jazz will win, but do you think Mavs will cover? Because as you mentioned, they have covered.
Yeah, I think the Jazz, I think they take care of business. They cover tonight. I mean, let me see what the latest number is because I'm seeing different things. Hold on.
You get better odds when you take them outright.
Yeah, if you take the money line, because
Mavs spread is -120. Jazz spread's plus 100.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me see where we're at. Jazz are laying 1.5 now at SI Sportsbook.
But at plus 110 or 100, I mean. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mavs to cover is -120. Yeah. So I like them outright -110.
I'd say, just take the money line on them. Lay the 110 with Utah. That's interesting. So, okay. Or you get the plus money.
I know their spread numbers are pretty different compared to the rest of the slate here.
Yeah, I mean, look, you take Utah -1.5 plus 100, so at least it's even money if you take that. You get to win by 2, or you lay the 110 to win by 1. Obviously, 1 or more.
Yeah.
So is that minus?
What about I like the over Sixers in Toronto too. I mean, it's at 208.
Yeah, that total right now that's dropped.
Well, and then like Mavs and Jazz are pretty close at 210.
Well, they've had 4 straight
that's a
unders in
tough
that
one.
76ers Raptors series. This is the lowest total in the series. So now you say, okay, is it going to open up a little bit? You get both teams in the 105s. You get an
Well, when you're
over.
talking, when we looking at the differences here, Mavs minus 120 with the spread, Utah plus 100. But when you scroll up, Sixers and Raptors, Sixers money line is minus 130. Raptors
Right.
is plus 105. That's even a bigger difference.
Yeah, I guess they want. I mean, I would just with the Jazz, I would just lay the 110 and just not worry about winning by 1. That's always a hard one because you say, okay, what's more?
I know. I think the
guaranteed?
plus 100 is just like it's like, ooh, that sounds really good.
It does,
I just believe in the Mavs. I do.
but also I think if you're gonna lay the 1.5, you don't want to get stuck where they win the game by 1. You'd rather lay the
Like they did
110.
last time. But it's good odds,
Yeah, I'd
It's
rather
really
lay the
good odds. I
110.
think it's a good value pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see
I
what
would
happens.
say
I mean,
I don't want Mavs to win, but hey, I think that's just the value alone. I'd probably take it.
yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see how this whole thing turns out. So, all right, Steph. So tomorrow, you'll be running the show tomorrow, and
We're gonna break
get more
down.
NFL draft talk.
Yeah, we're breaking down the draft, what moves were made, what is to be expected in day 2. I got Brian Perez from the NFL Draft Network, and then I have Eric Crocker. He has Locked On NFL Draft. So we're gonna have a good breakdown of what we saw in day 1, what is left to be done in day 2, and the rest of the rounds. So lots of future NFL stars and where they're gonna fall. It's so exciting. It really is.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
there we
you'll
go.
review the first round and then talk about 2 and 3 tomorrow. Busy weekend in Las Vegas, so that'll be really good. So our thanks to Scott Smith from the Action Network at Scott Smith FF. You can find his work there. His final mock draft is out there on the Action Network. Stephanie, you could check out her video for the draft on social media. You can find her on Twitter at Steph Otey, right there on the screen.
Let us know if you catch every reference. I want to know if everyone can catch them all.
She's got probably like 10 or 11 of them. So
I know I jammed it in 60 seconds, but hey.
Yeah. So check that out. Stephanie's going to host tomorrow. Talk more NFL draft. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.